Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business leaders and real estate experts. Past guests include Mark Marquin. He's a mortgage lender. Jay Connor talking about raising private money, and Darren Huang, who has 100 units under management and a host of industrial properties. Those are all interesting shows where those guys talk about the tricks of their trade. Today's episode is brought to you by Chris Lyle State Farm. Chris Lyle's State Farm helps you protect your most precious assets and investments, whether it's your home and auto, investment rental properties, or other valuables. Call Chris Lyle State Farm for a quick, painless phone call to potentially save you double digits on all of your insurance needs. Visit Dial Lyle. That's DIALLILE.com or call his office at 918-878-7771. Today's episode is also brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we are a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. Boom. What do we have for you today? Joseph Noor. I'm super excited to have this conversation because we all don't want to pay more than our fair share of taxes. And Joseph is here to help us do that. Today's guest is Joseph Noor, an innovator at the intersection of real estate and technology. He's a co-founder and CTO of Ownwell, and he's revolutionizing the way property owners manage their assets. Under Joseph's leadership, Ownwell is developing cutting-edge technology solutions to reduce the cost and complexity of owning real estate. Joseph Noor, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. We were just chatting a little bit about the summer heat here in Tulsa and where you are in Austin. It's I'm glad to be inside. And I'm glad to have one of those remote start things on my car.
Totally.
Although I don't have a Ford. The Fords have like a button. You just press it and it works 100% of the time. I have a Toyota, so I have to like click it a bunch of times and it's really, and then I have to like hope that it turned on because I probably
Sometimes
can't see
it
my
doesn't
car.
work.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's the worst. But I want my car to be cool when I go in, so it's like a, to your point, like a cold hug.
Cold hug.
Let's talk about Ownwell. What is Ownwell? What do you guys do? What services do you provide?
Yeah. So we started Ownwell 4.5 years ago. And my co-founder, Colton, he was an asset manager at a family office. So he was basically investing a billionaire's money. And they bought a lot of real estate. And what they found is that in order to make that the most attractive investment possible, they had to keep those taxes down. And so they had an internal team that would essentially appeal those property taxes every year, try to keep those taxes as low as possible to make their investment as attractive as possible. And so he thought it's crazy that a billionaire is taking advantage of this property tax appeal system. Nobody else is doing it. So he thought, I should create a company that helps people do that. And so I met him in school and we got started. And that's basically what we did is we just protested, appealed property taxes for anybody that was willing to let us do it for them. And it started working. And that's kind of been the game since. So what do? We help people save money on their property taxes.
And what sort of general, it's going to vary by jurisdiction. It's going to vary in a bunch of different ways, I suspect. But what level of savings can you generally find on appeal?
Yeah, I mean, that is extremely dependent on geography. In our best geographies, we can get upwards of 10% reduction on the assessment, which translates to approximately proportional reduction on the property tax bill. But that is, again, highly dependent on geography. There are some counties that are brutal. There's some boards that are brutal and they don't want to give you anything. So, we still do it. We'll still go after it because we want to get the best possible reduction. But, you're talking 1%, 2% in some cases.
Yeah. And why would there even be a case for appeal? Like, why is there,
Absolutely.
Where is the deficiency in the process such that there would be one house listed for, let's call it 200,000 here and across the street it'd be at 150?
Yeah. So basically here's the way it works today, right? Is every single county is responsible for levying the assessment of every single property in that county every year. So they hire a bunch of assessors and okay, your job is to decide what the value of every property is every year so we can charge property taxes.
Yeah.
And the reason is because property taxes are an ad valorem tax. So it's like proportional to the value of the real estate. And so because of that, and because there's, let's say, millions of properties in Houston, there's way too many for a team of assessors to actually go door to door and figure out the exact value for every single one. And so they use this off the shelf software. right? That you basically buy this tool and you plug in some variables and it spits out a bunch of values, right? And that's essentially what most counties end up having to do. And so because of that, what they use are these really simple models like linear regression. So if you imagine a scatter plot, you imagine like a best fit line on that scatter plot. So some of these are going to be brought down to the best fit line. Some of these guys are going to be brought up. So these are people that are going to be underassessed and overassessed, right? And so what we do is we just take a finer grain analysis and we make sure that we're trying to get to true value as opposed to what some simplified software is predicting.
But presumably you do that by saying in a 3-block radius, I'm seeing that this one is is underassessed, and you're using that as the benchmark for me also being underassessed. Now, underassessed, it's all subjective, and we all want to be underassessed, frankly, because we want to pay less tax, and I appreciate that and agree with it. But is that what's going on? You're going. These are all the examples of you being underassessing, and we also want to be considered in this underassessed category.
Yeah,
you're not going to say it like that.
Exactly. I mean,
fairly assessed.
You got to speak their language. And honestly, the laws vary by state. Every state has kind of their rules for what is a valid case that you can bring. So pretty much every state allows the sales approach, the comparable sale. So the house next door sells, it's the exact same home as, let's say it's a townhome, right? The townhome next door to you sells for a particular value. You're probably worth just about the same because you're an exact model. And obviously that's an impractical case. So that one works everywhere. Sometimes exactly what you said. So that's typically referred to as like the equity approach. So their assessment and my assessment should be relatively fair. And so you can make arguments based on that too. And there's a few different approaches that you can use besides that as well.
Got it. And so the assessor site the people that are assessing it want to maximize it because that's the revenue base for the city for all their services or whatever. And we want to, as citizens fighting back, we want to pay less. Makes total sense.
I would say we want it to be fair, right? Like it's not necessarily that we want to, okay, so like I as an individual obviously want my bill to be as low as possible. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if the billionaire is arguing that his giant commercial complex is actually 20% less than what they assessed it at, shouldn't we all have a fair shot to make sure that ours is also equally proportional and equally fair? So I'm not overpaying relative to everybody else. Like at the end of the day, that's kind of the way that we position our mission is we just want to make sure everybody has a fair shake, that they are getting the best deal or the most fair deal that they should be getting. And ideally that is as low as possible.
Yep. Love that. Where are you servicing? Where does Ownwell right now service for this assessment kind of evaluation?
Yeah, totally. So we're in 7 states. So we are in Texas, California, Washington, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, and New York.
Got it. When are you guys coming to Oklahoma?
Soon.
We don't pay a ton of property tax, to be fair.
Yeah, that's typically how we decide where we should go next is where is the pain the most felt. And so we just stack rank by property tax rate. Yeah.
So we're somewhere down the list eventually when you gobble up all the other greater paying tax authorities.
That's right.
Or tax jurisdictions, you'll make your way down to Tulsa. So what is the property tax appeal process usually entail?
Yeah, so they all follow a fairly similar pattern. So there's a bunch of paperwork you got to fill out that essentially is information about the property, why you think the value is too high, do you have any evidence that you want to attach to it, and so on and so forth. You take that appeal, protest, grievance, whatever you want to call it, depends on the jurisdiction, and you file that with the county assessor. So you push a bunch of paperwork, and that kicks off the process. Sometimes there's a fee associated with it, sometimes there isn't. Once you do that, then there's typically a conversation that gets opened up. Sometimes you can try to settle sometimes they'll say, hey, we agree with your value. You're good to go. And that's the easy case. Love it when that happens. Sometimes they say, hey, we think that you're being a bit too aggressive here. Let's get on a phone call. And so they'll schedule something and we start discussing it and maybe we can come to a resolution.
And does a client of yours need some sort of POA in order for you guys to speak on their behalf? Or does the client also need to be involved in that conversation?
So one of the things that we decided early on is we wanted to make it as easy as possible. So Smart. Basically, if a customer signs up with us or if a client signs up with us, we take care of everything from that point. So we have an entire team of in-house experts in every single geography and every single county that we service that knows their system, that has relationships with the assessors there, that knows how to speak their language. And so they're the ones that represent our clients. So when a client signs up on our website, essentially what that is they're actually physically signing an electronic document, and that is an authorization of agent where we are now your tax agent. And that means that our people can represent you as your tax agent for the purposes of discussing your assessment.
Okay, so sometimes a physical, there's actually a phone call or something else, and then
Totally.
what happens
That's the
next?
most common case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if that doesn't work, then we go to an actual hearing. So the hearing is almost like a traffic court,
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
that. It's not quite like a legal proceeding, but it's definitely more formal than just like a phone call. And so you've got us representing.
I'm envisioning like Judge Wapner, the People's Court, or whatever it
Exactly.
is. There's like intro music.
Yep.
Okay.
Um, and so we've got our people that show up there, or you can protest yourself. So you should do that too. If in Oklahoma, since we're not there yet, if you
Yeah.
want to appeal the property taxes, you totally should. And so you would show up there with whatever evidence you have, and then the assessor would be the defendant in that case, and they'd be
Yeah.
defending the assessment that they've levied. And then there's a board, so it could be a single person. These are usually citizens that are just volunteer for the county.
Mhm.
And so these are going to be, could be one person, could be three people. It kind of depends. Sometimes it's the panel, sometimes it's just like a judge.
Mhm.
So I guess it's judge or jury, right? Depending on
Yeah.
the county. And you make your case, they make their case, and they render a verdict.
And is that verdict final, or do you have an appeals process after that if you don't like it? You go to city
Yeah,
council.
there's actually a second. You can escalate the process pretty far up. Typically, we find that if they've settled it and they've decided, unless they're being crooked, which look, it's not 100% of the time squeaky clean. Usually that ends up being the final value. You can escalate it, but we only do it a relatively small fraction of the time.
Yeah. So if you guys are having to submit paper documents in order to file somebody's appeal, a client's appeal, have you figured out how to automate that at some level? You're taking a bunch of data that I put into the online submission form and then populate a field? Or are you handwriting into a submission field a bunch of details?
Yeah, no, I when we first got started, yeah, I
You're
was
doing that.
personally hand filling every single thing, right? And I was personally scheduling every single thing in our calendars. Now, we have, so I build software, and I wanted to learn the process so I could build software to do it. So the way I think about it is, anything that I can use to take the bureaucratic process and put it on rails and automate it, I'm going to do. But there is like this magic, which is that process which is the actual act of advocating and arguing, right? That is something that is very human. That is something that only somebody who's really good at their job, who really understands real estate, who understands the market, can make a compelling case for. And
Yeah.
that's never going to get automated. But I want to supercharge that person. I want to give them all the tools at their disposal. I want to make sure that I can streamline and take away anything that isn't them using their brain to make and argue the best case possible.
I mean, but in that case, it becomes, I don't know, we talk about it in HVAC and services businesses. We call it root density, ROUTE, not ROT, like a tree. Root density, like how many houses can you service on this block before you move on to the next block? So you guys would like to actually have 10 appeals cases in front of the commission or the committee at the same time. So you kind of do them all on the, call it 16th of June. I don't know if that's a weekend. No, it must be a weekend. I don't know, but on whatever day of June, so that ultimately your time is well used and you're only driving to that courthouse or
Totally.
that city council building one time for 10 cases. Is that right?
Well, yeah, we got people there pretty much every day. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're there all day, every day. They've got a good, we create those relationships, and they know each other, and they work together pretty much all day, every day, because that's the job. That's what we do, and we're here to represent our clients.
So how many people are on staff now, full-time employees at Ownwell?
Yeah, full-time employees, we're pushing 100 now. So we've grown quite a bit since we got started.
So you have representation in a lot of different counties in the areas where you're
I learned that real early on is if you don't have somebody who's there who knows the market and knows the geography and knows exactly how it works in that particular area, you're not going to be as good at your job, right? Like we can have people call in, like we'll have people, sometimes we're overstaffed in one particular geo and we'll try to like relocate them. It never works as well. So I feel very strongly that you got to have your people local that actually know the market and they're the ones advocating.
Interesting. Talk to me about investors, people that are like your co-founders, billionaire, family office guy. If you own, as many of our clients do, 2, 3, or 4 houses, when does it become sensible to employ this strategy for an additional cash flow?
Yeah. So my dad's a real estate investor, and he's an Ownwell customer. And I actually remember when I first spoke to Colton, my co-founder Colton, about this. And he mentioned this problem, and I was like, "Oh, my dad was actually just talking about this issue." So my dad owned a couple homes in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to file an appeal because he was like, "Oh, these assessments are totally off. I bought the home. I know how much it's worth. I bought it 2 years ago. I know how much it's worth. And so he filed it and he tried to get on the phone and informally negotiate, but they actually wanted him to show up in person.
Sir, you're going to have to come out here and visit us.
That's exactly right. Because they know the game, right? And he didn't do it. Right? And so he was sitting there thinking, man, that was such a pain in the butt that like I wanted to lower it. I got so close there, but I just didn't have the time to really make, book a flight, make my way out there. So, because of that, he's now an Ownwell customer and we appeal every single home that he owns right now, every single year. Right? We do it for him. His commercial buildings, same thing. We do everything we can to lower his property taxes. And so it's the same basic problem, right? It's like if you understand real estate well, right? If you're a real estate investor, you can probably make a great case. And if you want to make that case and you want to file the paperwork and you want to go through the process of negotiating and show up to the hearing, like Godspeed.
Yeah,
I respect that. And I love that. And the more people that do it, maybe they'll actually start getting good at their job of levying assessments. But if you don't have the time because you're busy, making other deals or you don't want to have to go to every single county that you own real estate in, that's what we're here for. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a case that people can do it individually. It's just if you make more than $20 or $30 an hour and value your time, you might as well go to Ownwell and let them do it for you.
And like our whole business model is, we're just contingency based. So if we don't save you anything, our service is entirely free, right? Yeah. We just take a small cut of what we save you. Our fee typically is around 25 to 35%, depending on the geography. And so that's it, right? If I save you, if I put 10 grand in your pocket, I'm gonna charge you, let's say 2,500. It's a win-win all around.
And what are the chances that once put under a microscope, the property gets reassessed at a higher value than it's currently assessed?
So it depends on the state. It's technically possible in Washington and a few others that we operate in. For example, Texas has a law that can't happen, right? So Texas is great. We file everything.
Love that.
Worst case scenario is nothing happens, right? Yeah. But then in those other geographies, we actually pay attention before we file something in Washington State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Washington State's a tough place to do business. Okay. So our approach generally, and we manage a lot of third-party properties. We also own a good number of properties, and not as a business, but me personally and with other people in the company. And we love to buy properties for as cheap as humanly possible. Let's get get the burn property. Let's get the one that has all the foundation issue. And then we add, we might buy it for 12, 15, 20, 40, 60, and then add up to $100,000. And the reassessment is slow to happen. And the assessed value generally in Oklahoma, I don't know if I think it generally will track the purchase price of the house. So if the deed transfer is at $12,000, the assessed value is naturally going to be at $12,000. Then you get permits for doing all the inspections, and they may, if you're adding, let's say we added $70,000, we now have a, $90,000 property for simplicity's sake, or $100,000 for simplicity's sake. They're probably not going to assess it at $100,000 because you bought it for 20 and put in 80. They're going to assess the $80,000 construction because they, of course, have no clue what you actually put in. They don't check your P&L. They don't ask you for receipts. They're going to assess it at, at 20,000 additional. So now I'm going to be at 20 plus 20 is 40, and they're going to assess me on 40. Great. Is that, are some counties more sophisticated than others? Are some going to assess it at the average price per square foot of transactions for the last 12 months? So if the average sale of a constructed house went for $200 a square foot, are they assuming that I did a renovation on 1,000 square feet and they're going to now, assess me at $200,000 variable less the $20,000 purchase price?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've actually seen it go both ways. So I've seen teardowns get assessed at the teardown, and then they catch a permit and they assume that it got rebuilt and they go reassess it. I've seen the other way where you buy a teardown, and especially in non-disclosure states, I've noticed it particularly it's egregious there.
Which Texas is a non-disclosure. Yeah,
exactly. So they don't actually know how much you bought it for, and so they just assume, oh, investor came and bought it. It must be a nice property. Let's assess it at whatever the median price per square foot is in the area. And so I've seen it go both ways. The way that we look at it is we take a fine-grained analysis on every single property. We're only going to file the ones that make sense. So if we think that we're going to alert them, we're certainly not going to put you in a position where the value is going to go up. On the flip side, there's always, I've seen cases where assessments would go up because you're alerting them of it, but usually the permit that gets approved, now if you're doing everything without permits and they don't know any better and they don't know that it got renovated, then no one's ever going to catch it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But usually I've seen the permit be the one that actually triggers the reassessment because they say it's, basically renovated.
But in a non-disclosure state, does that mean that the county is actually not collecting the data on what you paid, or is it rather that the assessor site and the whatever agency is responsible for doing
Yeah.
for understanding the deeds, the recorders office, whoever, are not speaking?
So they'll record the deed transfer, and usually that's done for other reasons, like to make exemptions fall off and things like that, like reset exemptions and things like
Yeah.
that. But since they don't actually know the purchase price unless somebody discloses it to them, they can't really.
It's
They just have
unknown.
to guess. And so one thing it's games like this that I hate. One of the things that they'll do is, oh, they see a deed transfer. They don't know how much it was purchased for. So I'm going to way overshoot the assessment on this property and come bring in your closing disclosure and come prove to me exactly how much you bought it for. Come disclose that information so I can now update my records with the sale of your property and I'll assess you exactly at that value. Right. And so we've seen things like that as well, which I don't know. I just hate games like that. It just feels so.
Is it good practice to bring it in? It depends on what you paid for the property, I guess. But like, do you as a point of principle not bring them in a settlement statement or a closing disclosure because you don't want to give them that data?
We will do everything we can to never disclose information we don't have to disclose. But if it's a slam dunk, like they like they did exactly that and they way overshot, and they're basically going to say, if you don't show me the closing disclosure, I'm going to assume that it's more. Yeah, then we're in a spot where we have to disclose that, and so we'll redact everything and show what we got to show.
Yeah. Games. The tax man's going to get you.
Yeah.
What else should our investors know about the appeals process, about doing it, whether they should do it, shouldn't do it? I mean, we have folks that have 50 or 100 properties, and I don't know if a service like Ownwell doesn't exist do you have competitors in the market? I mean, is this a first of kind?
No, there's been some players in the game. They typically focus on like large commercial properties. So, 5 million plus in value. They've kind of touched anything else because, there's a bunch of bureaucratic processes that just aren't worth their time. Like they can't turn a profit doing it, right? Which is why I'm trying to build software under the hood that essentially automates all of the bureaucratic paperwork. So we're only doing the things that are super high value in terms of our users' time and our people's time.
Sure. And do CB Richard Ellis and the big like commercial brokers generally have a department that does this for big commercial properties?
Yeah, or they'll have like some lawyer that they know that they're like buddy with, and they just recommend them to kind of whoever comes in and says, hey, I need help with my property taxes. And that's who my father used before we came in and basically said, hey, no, we'll service your entire portfolio.
Yeah. Any advice or thoughts for investors that may be listening to this? Any tips or little nuggets of wisdom when they are going to go submit these documents?
That's a good question. I'll have to think about that a little bit. Maybe it'll come to me as I'm talking. The way that I think about it.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking like the way that I think about it and the way that we've intentionally structured the business is we are going to do our best. This is where we are the absolute experts in the space, right? We understand exactly how every single county operates. We do this every day, all day. We have those relationships because we want to make sure that we have the best outcome for our client. And, Fulton and I specifically structured this business in a way where we want incentives to all be aligned the same way, right? So we're not going to make $1 unless you're making more. Sure. And so the way that I think about it is, and the way that I encourage people to think about it is, you sign up your portfolio, it's on autopilot. We're always going to monitor your assessment. We're going to provide you the necessary updates. If we think there's an opportunity to save you money, we're going to go after it because that's how we make our money. That's how we pay our people. Yeah. And so it's essentially something that it's one less thing to have to worry about is you never have to think about, are my assessments fair? Like we'll make sure that's the case forever.
How does it work though? If you guys create a savings for me, I'm going to save $1,000 a year on my taxes. And I'm actually going to save that money in perpetuity, right? Until it gets reassessed and then we have to fight it again or whatever else. I'm going to save that. I mean, think about it on a 30-year fixed mortgage. I'm escrowing those funds. I'm going to save that money, but then you send me an invoice. I mean, do you have people that don't pay their invoices? And what happens if they don't pay their invoices?
Yeah, so
you put a lien on the property, presumably.
When those particular customers call us and they say, I'm not going to feel that until my escrow company decides to change my monthly fee. In that case, we'll just delay your invoice until essentially when your tax bill is due, because that's when your escrow company would kind of change that monthly payment. And that is how you feel it, right? Is that essentially we're going to lower your assessment. And if you're escrowed, you're actually not going to reap those savings until tax bill is due. And so then we kind of push out the invoice due date until then. What was the other part of your
So
question?
you could potentially have an accounts receivable issue where you're 300 days out on receivables.
Totally. Yeah. And that does happen. If you pay the bill yourself, then you're not going to feel that. But yeah, from our side, we do charge essentially as soon as the service is rendered. So you see your assessment is dropped down, but
Yeah.
you don't actually feel that until you go to pay your tax bill, which would be.
Does anyone ever not pay you? People like, nope, not doing this. And you're like, what, do you lien properties? How do you ensure that the service is
You're not
rendered
lien
actually?
properties. There's this one guy. Am I allowed to say it? Am I allowed? I don't want to disclose too much information. He owned
Just no names.
trampoline parks.
Yeah.
We saved him so much money, and he just disappeared. Very frustrating, like
Yeah.
we really helped him out, and like you just
like 6 figures.
5 figures, high 5.
Okay.
High 5. We saved him very high 5 figures, and yeah, he just never paid his invoice. I know his name. I think about him all the time.
What a jerk. I mean, that's a critical risk though. I guess, is there a way, so you guys might not want to be the people that lien somebody's property. You don't want to be that company. You don't want that karmic implication.
Yeah,
but is there a, I mean, your attorneys must have given you counsel on this. You can theoretically, for services rendered, lien somebody's property. Now you probably won't get paid. Your attorneys will get a call from the closing company when they decide to sell it in 20 years, and it's still a bad debt write-off. But you guys have made the decision to not chase those people.
I think if it became a really big problem, we would probably have to do something, right? We currently have honest customers, and we're trying to run an honest business. And as long as it maintains that way, I would rather just not stress about something like that, despite what legal might recommend. If the fundamentals of the business change and all of a sudden people thought they could just have us perform the service and never pay us, we'd have to do something a little different. Hopefully never have to do that.
Good to chat. Joseph Noor, this has been a lot of fun in an industry I had not thought of, but now I'm going to go protest my own house and all the rental homes that I own, and try to consolidate the hearings into one beautiful sunny hot day in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I did do one on an apartment complex that I owned years ago, and it was successful. I think they didn't come down all the way to the point that I wanted them to come down to, but they certainly didn't. They did not follow through with the notice of increase evaluation that they originally wanted to do. So it was successful. I think Tulsa, Oklahoma is not a super combative assessor environment, what I'd say.
Glad to hear it.
And also super friendly along the way. Nobody called me yelling or doing anything else. It was a very cordial conversation. I presented the case that I wanted to present, and they, by email agreed that they weren't going to raise it as much as they thought that they originally should have.
That's perfect. That's the happy path. And, that's usually how it goes.
Have you guys considered doing, what do you call it? Like stage gated content, like whatever, where you have to put in your details in order to get the content, but kind of a user's guide to doing this in markets where you don't operate?
Yeah, we early on, we created some content like that, but honestly, we should revisit it and try to get kind of further in detail about exactly how you can do it. One thing that we've talked internally about is that we could actually build some software that, for example, you're in Oklahoma, we could just build some software that helps you build your case, essentially like shows them, because we have the data, right? That's what I do all day, like that data. So I can just show it to you, and, you basically build the case you want to build, click go, essentially what we have for our internal team. And just surface it to you guys so you could use it everywhere. So we've talked about that. Maybe. Yeah.
Be helpful. I've got a lot of houses. I'd love to kind of get access to something like that if it were ever made available. Today's guest has been Joseph Noor, an innovator at the intersection of real estate and technology. As the co-founder and CTO of Ownwell, he's revolutionizing the way property owners manage their assets. Under Joseph's leadership, Ownwell is developing cutting-edge technology solutions to reduce the costs and complexities of owning real estate, specifically related to assessment of tax values of properties. Joseph, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Anything you want to say to anybody before you go, or maybe tell people where they can go to get a consultation if they want to?
Yeah, our website is ownwell.com, because we're here to help you own your real estate well. So that's OWNWELL.com. You just type in your address. It's a super fast sign up process, and we'll take it from there.
Love it. Joseph, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.